When you think of the Philippines, what comes to mind? Beautiful beaches? Some of the friendliest people on Earth? What if I told you the world also saw a secret government massacre that lit the fuse for a rebellion? A nation that taught the world how to topple a dictator without a civil war, and a level of modern-day chaos that literally breaks the internet? If you think you know the Philippines, you might want to think again. For decades, the world has been watching this nation, often in shock, sometimes in awe, as it serves up moments so intense and unexpected they simply demand global attention. From the darkest parts of its history to the wild energy of its modern culture, the Philippines just has a way of making everyone stop and stare. Today, we're breaking down 3 insane moments that put the Philippines on the world stage. These aren't just dry history lessons, they are raw, powerful events that show the complex, resilient, and sometimes chaotic soul of the Filipino people. It was a secret that was never, ever supposed to get out. A classified military op so dark that when it was exposed it would ignite one of Southeast Asia's longest-running conflicts. Picture this. It's 1968. The Cold War is in full swing, and tensions are sky-high. President Ferdinand Marcos greenlights a top-secret plan called Operation Merdeka. The goal? To train a covert unit of Filipino Muslim commandos known as Moros to slip into Sabah, a territory in Malaysia that the Philippines had a claim over, and stir up trouble. The military recruited young Moro men, promising them the glory of becoming elite soldiers with a steady paycheck. They were brought to Corregidor Island, a place already famous for sacrifice, for what they were told was special forces training. But the reality on the island was grim. The promised money never arrived, the conditions were awful, and the recruits started to resent their Christian Filipino officers. The real breaking point came when they learned the true nature of their mission. They were being trained to fight and kill fellow Muslims in Sabah. For many, this was a line they would not cross, a betrayal of their faith and their people. They mutinied, writing a petition to President Marcos to protest their conditions and refuse the mission. On the night of March 18, 1968, soldiers woke the recruits and marched them to an airstrip, telling them they were finally going home. Instead, they were executed by their own trainers. Gunfire tore through the night as young men were systematically killed. The plan was for them to simply vanish, casualties of a secret war that never happened. But the masterminds made one fatal error. They left a survivor. Jibin Arula, one of the trainees, was shot but miraculously managed to play dead. He then made an impossible escape, running and swimming through the shark-infested waters of Manila Bay until he reached the shores of Cavite. He was found by local fishermen, and his story, of a government-sanctioned massacre of its own citizens, began to spread like wildfire. The news was explosive. For the Moro people, it was a brutal confirmation of the prejudice and neglect they had long felt from the central government. The Jabita massacre wasn't just a military scandal, it was the spark that ignited a revolution. It directly led to the rise of the Moro National Liberation Front, MNLF, which would wage an armed struggle for autonomy that would last for decades. The world watched as a nation turned on itself, all because of a secret that refused to stay buried. How do you overthrow a dictator without starting a civil war? In 1986, the world found out. For 4 incredible days, the Philippines put on a masterclass in peaceful rebellion, a spectacle so powerful it was called the revolution that surprised the world. By the mid-1980s, Ferdinand Marcos had been in power for 2 decades. His rule, which once held promise, had decayed into an authoritarian regime defined by corruption, the loss of civil liberties, and economic disaster. The country was hurting badly, and in 1984 and 1985, the economy shrank by a devastating 7.3% each year, the worst recession in the nation's history. On August 21, 1983, opposition leader Senator Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr. was assassinated on the tarmac of the Manila International Airport, the very moment he returned from exile. His death shocked the nation and galvanized millions of Filipinos who had finally lost their fear. The people were done. In a desperate move to appear legitimate, Marcos called a snap presidential election for February 1986. Running against him was Ninoy's widow, Corazon Cory Aquino, a reluctant leader who became a powerful symbol of hope. The election was a total sham. The government declared Marcos the winner, but an independent watchdog showed Aquino with a clear lead. This blatant fraud was the last straw. The revolution didn't start with a bang. but with a press conference. On February 22, two of Marcos's top men, Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile and Armed Forces Vice Chief of Staff Fidel V. Ramos, defected. They holed themselves up in military camps along the capital's main highway, Edessa, and demanded that Marcos resign. They were exposed, and a bloody assault by Marcos's loyalist forces felt certain. What happened next was unbelievable. The Archbishop of Manila, Cardinal Jaime Sin, went on the radio and begged the people, "Go to Edsa, protect our soldiers," and the people came. They came in the thousands, then hundreds of thousands, until millions of ordinary citizens flooded the highway, forming a human barricade to shield the rebel soldiers. They brought nothing but faith and guts. Nuns knelt in front of advancing tanks, praying the rosary. Young women placed flowers into the barrels of soldiers' rifles. Families shared food, sang patriotic anthems, and stood shoulder to shoulder, a civilian shield against a dictator's army. For 4 days, the world was glued to their TVs watching this incredible standoff. Marcos ordered his troops to attack, but the soldiers, faced with their own unarmed people, refused to fire. On February 25, 1986, it was over. With his military and international support gone, Ferdinand Marcos and his family fled the presidential palace and were flown into exile. That same day, Corazon Aquino was sworn in as president. The Philippines didn't just reclaim its democracy, it showed the world a new way to fight tyranny. The People Power Revolution became a symbol of hope across the globe, inspiring nonviolent movements everywhere, from South Korea to Eastern Europe. It was a moment when Filipinos, armed with little more than conviction, reminded everyone of the true power of the people. Jump forward a few decades and the Philippines is still making global headlines for the wildest reasons. Only this time, the battlefield isn't a highway, and the weapon isn't a rosary, it's a live stream. And the event is the completely chaotic 2024 visit of one of the internet's biggest stars, iShowSpeed. For anyone who doesn't know, iShowSpeed is an American streamer famous for his hyperactive, loud, and totally unpredictable content. So when he announced a trip to the Philippines, no one was quite prepared for the pandemonium that was about to unfold. His visit wasn't just a vacation, it became a cultural event that hijacked the internet and showed the world a side of Filipino fan culture it had never seen on this scale. From the second he landed, his every move went viral. The Philippines became the backdrop for his unique brand of chaos. He tried balut for the first time, with his over-the-top reaction becoming an instant meme. He played basketball on local courts, danced with kids in the streets, and even linked up with the nation's boxing hero Manny Pacquiao. Each moment was streamed live to millions of his followers, giving them a raw, unfiltered, and often hilarious window into modern Filipino life. But what really made the world's jaw drop was the sheer intensity of the fans. Everywhere Speed went, he was swarmed by massive screaming crowds. This wasn't just a few fans wanting a picture, this was a level of passion that bordered on pure hysteria. At one point, he was so mobbed by his supporters he literally had to be carried through the crowd. In another viral clip, a fan snagged a lock of his hair, which made Speed humorously beg his fans on stream to maybe be a little gentler. The entire trip became a global spectacle. News outlets and social media users around the world watched with a mix of awe and disbelief. It was a perfect storm, highlighting the Philippines' status as one of the most online countries on the planet. Filipino fans aren't just passive viewers, they are passionate, engaged, and incredibly organized. When they rally behind someone, whether it's a K-pop group or a chaotic streamer, they do it with an energy that is simply off the charts. This event wasn't a political revolution, but in the currency of the 21st century, attention, it was a total global takeover. For 1 week, the Philippines was the center of the internet, not for its politics, but for its wild, passionate, and sometimes overwhelming fan culture. It just goes to show that the nation is still capturing the world's attention in the most insane and unexpected ways. And it proves that whether it's toppling a dictator or mobbing a YouTuber, Filipinos do it with a passion the world can't ignore. From a tragic betrayal on a remote island that sparked a rebellion, to the incredible courage on a highway that brought down a dictator, to a modern internet frenzy that stopped the digital world in its tracks. The story of the Philippines is anything but ordinary. These moments, though decades apart, are all tied together by one thing: the unbreakable, unpredictable, and powerful spirit of the Filipino people. It's a spirit that can withstand unbelievable hardship, rise up against impossible odds, and embrace the chaos of the world with an energy that's all its own. These are the insane moments that made the world watch, and they are a tribute to a nation that never ever fails to leave its mark. Which of these moments do you think had the biggest impact? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more insane stories from around the world.